At this point, I'll pass the mic to Zan Fleming, founder and executive chairman of the Catalyst Institute, who will address the cluster of challenges for generating evidence and why this is critical. Zan?
Well, thank you, Thomas. It's a great honor to be with you today. I feel that we have a global community right before our eyes, and we thank our colleagues at Aging Analytics for getting the ball rolling. We're pleased and very, very excited to be a part of this community. I bring a background as an endocrinologist. I was at NIH minding my own business and got an opportunity to go to FDA thinking that it would be a sabbatical. I ended up finding that I was better at critiquing other people's research than doing it myself. So I made a career at FDA, and I was lucky enough to be there in time to approve the first statin, to approve metformin, and a number of other therapies that are important today. But let me tell you, I am tired of developing treatments to manage chronic disease. I think that clearly, as Adrian mentioned, is where the focus is right now. It's dealing with the morbidity and mortality of chronic diseases and using palliatives, not preventives. So we want to change that at the Catalyst Institute. And part of that really has to do with identifying the key roadblocks to getting solutions to people. Now, the science, as you know, is spectacular. We've got plenty of evidence that we can make inroads in increasing healthy longevity and preventing chronic, or at least delaying the onset of chronic disease. The big problem, though, is that even though we had this explosion in the lab, ranging all across the world, we have very few studies that are actually in the clinic and aimed at showing that a product works. We have had on the drawing boards for some years the TAME trial, the trial to target aging with metformin, a drug I approved at FDA back in the early 90s. That drug had some promise for preventing age-related diseases or slowing them. But even though it has this promise, there is no incentive for actually doing a trial that would show that these diseases can be slowed in their onset by metformin. And Thomas mentioned one of the reasons, and that is simply a lack of incentives to take a generic drug and to do the necessary trials to show that the product works. The reason that we have so few studies going is simply because we don't have a way of attracting investment in trials that will show long-term evidence of safety and effectiveness. In other words, ways that these products can be approved for health span indications. And that's what Catalyst wants to take on among one of its hallmark programs. The problem is today we've got the great science, and we'd like to be able to put the solution into the mouth or otherwise given to a consumer who's healthy, but we can't. We just don't have the evidence today. And so what we are going to have to do is to work backwards and understand what it's going to take to be able to get a consumer to be able to take a product that is prescribed by a physician, if it is a regulated product. And we at Catalyst have a very broad appetite for any solution, not just regulated pharmaceuticals and advanced therapies, but certainly digital technology, nutritional products, lifestyle, anything that works. But let's just talk about what it's going to take to get products that are pharmaceuticals and could have some effect on health span. It takes having a physician who has a reason and can justify encouraging a patient or a consumer to take a medication for many years to prevent a future chronic disease. And to do that, it would take, in the US, having some of the major payers being willing to reimburse for that product. And for them to do that, it will take evidence for them to make that decision. And before that can happen, it's going to take the clinical trials that will be necessary and take longer than would be traditional for approving, say, a drug for diabetes or lowering cholesterol. So this is the big challenge, getting data that will ultimately lead to enough reason for FDA to approve the product, for payers to pay for it, for physicians to prescribe it, and the biggest nut to crack, getting people to take a product for 10 years or more to get some kind of effect. The way things are now, the kind of trials that are required will take decades and billions of dollars. And we've got to make that a much more approachable proposition. And that's something that we at Catalyst are working on right now. We want to make it possible to get the evidence that's going to allow physicians ultimately to prescribe the products. And again, I emphasize that regulated products is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's an important one, and it's one that we need to take on directly. I think we all understand that there is every reason to expect that we're going to have healthier aging people. We all want that for our society and for our upcoming generations. The science says we can, and concern for those who are coming after us and even ourselves says that we should. And ultimately, if we don't do something about this rising tide of older people who are plagued by chronic illnesses, then we will be in big trouble. So we must take on this big challenge. Catalyst is very pleased to be a part of this community that Longevity.International has stimulated. I thank you.
Thanks for that, Dr. Fleming. That was insightful.